Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Addict's Advocate. I'm your host, Dusty Dean, and it is my pleasure to welcome John to the episode. How are you, sir?
Good. How are we doing tonight?
I'm good. Thanks for spending the time on a Monday evening. I know it's late where you're at, so I do appreciate the time out of their busy day. You are better known as on TikTok and Instagram as @RecoveryJohn. I know that you are 5 years sober. You're actually an author as well. Have done some personalized coaching for individuals seeking to get recovery or maintain recovery. You've also done some speaking, so you're overall just basically, a sober warrior, the type of person that I want to learn from. My sobriety is fairly young, just a little bit over a year, but your experience, your wisdom is, I think, a benefit to us all. With that, I don't want to take any more of your time. So, we typically start at the beginning of it all, right? What was, how did the addiction manifest? What was the process? What made you seek recovery? And did it stick, relapses, etc.? You can give me whatever details you feel comfortable with sharing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll kick it off and stop me anytime if you have a question. My name is Jonathan Mendonca, known on TikTok and Instagram, Recovery John. Born and raised in Danbury, Connecticut. I moved in the second grade to a town next to it, a little nicer, not so much of a city, Brookfield. I was raised by both my parents. I had a younger brother in my life. Everyone was there. Had not a lot to write home to until my teens. Obsessed with baseball. Definitely, I was a crackhead before I was a crackhead, I always say. Diagnosed at like 12 with like high ADHD and ADD. I was always running around at family parties, acting a fool. But I always put my energy into good things. I was always into school, into baseball. I was huge on family, church on Sundays, CCD, confirmed. Had a high faith in what I believed was God at the time. And like I said, we were middle class. We had what we needed. When we moved to Brookfield, it was a little bit of a higher affluent town, so I was more on the lower class there. A lot of my friends had the new Jordans, the new baseball bats. Their parents had new Denali's. And we came from not really a city, but a bigger city than this town, and kind of felt behind the eight ball. A lot of my friends, what became my new friends through baseball, had everything they kind of wanted materialistically, and I felt like I had to like get myself there and you know make more of myself than them, and that ego grew and grew. About 13, everything changed for me. I've worked with and got sober around thousands of people and seen 1,000 of experience, and I always see there's two things that usually happen. There's a point where there's some kind of trauma, whether it's bloodshed for some or it could just be your parents splitting up. It all feels the same to everyone. And there's a part where the faith is lost in whatever you believe in, whether it's just karma, life, Jesus, God, Buddha, whatever it is. Um, and for me, it was at 13. I was playing paintball with a couple friends. Um, and in about 4 years, I went through a bunch of trauma incidences. But the first one was my friend's dad was there. He was chaperoning us. We were in like a quarry by my neighborhood. He tripped and fell. I thought he tripped and fell in front of me. I laughed, tried to get him up, and he was dead on arrival from I guess his fourth massive heart attack. So like I said, in my eyes, God to me and life to me was kind of as John sees it. I was kind of God, like if I wanted, my goal was always to be a New York Yankee. Um, I had the work ethic and talent, and like, so in my eyes, it was like, I have a great family. I'm going to be a Yankee. Everyone's healthy. I never really dealt with death until 13. So God in my eyes was kind of everything that I want to happen happens, even though I wasn't spoiled materially. And I never prayed again till I got sober. That was 13. I'm 34 now. I got sober at 29. So things got ugly fast. Right away, I got into anger first. You say I can't do something, I'll put my head through a wall, fight my dad. Me and my dad are very much the same, toe-to-toe type of guy. You say something he doesn't like that's disrespectful, he's going to let you know. And in my teens, I became the same, plus way more. I just felt like I needed control. I felt like the next 2 years, I went into freshman year and was like, all right, I'll focus on baseball, kind of forget what happened. Never really processed those emotions. Had a little PTSD of something around the corner was always going to happen bad. Like I wasn't prepared that day for that incident, and I felt like I needed to be prepared. So it was always kind of like, if a girlfriend was like a little sketchy, I would get out of it. If friend, I thought he was trying to stab me in the back, I'd beat him up. I was always like trying to win at life. And started baseball, and before our first game, I ruptured my spleen on a trampoline, and was in the ICU for a week. And I was out for one day, and then my throat closed, and I just felt this resentment towards God and life before I really touched alcohol or drugs. I felt like I was just trying to do something good. I just wanted to be Yankees because I like baseball, but I wanted to get rich just to help people, like retire my parents, help the homeless. And I was like, God and life is not letting me do this. Um, so I got introduced to alcohol and weed. My junior year became a mess pretty quick. I wasn't like a day drinker, but when everyone was having fun, I was breaking a bottle over my head, fighting someone, always had to be kicked out of a party, didn't know how to handle it. But I'll never lie that drugs and alcohol were my answer. They worked for what I wanted. They quieted the noise. It's just the repercussions of using were too much. Senior year, I graduated 2008. So that was the pandemic, or whatever they call it, epidemic of opiates starting in Oxycontin. Um, at this point, failing out of schools, threatening my principals. Baseball was really out of sight. I broke my leg my last year, and my grades were not on par. So that was kind of shot, and I got into selling drugs before I really did any hardcore drugs. Got into, I'm not going to make it in baseball, and I had a lot of older friends that were trafficking, things I'm not proud of. Oxycontin and pills from the city here to Connecticut. I got into that and used delivering pizzas as a front. That's why I had so much cash at a young age. And one time, everyone pushed me to do a drug. And I really hated drugs. I hated drug addicts. I hated drug dealers before I ever became one or an addict. I was very ignorant as to the struggle of addiction, which is why I do a lot what I do now. I didn't understand. I didn't even understand why my dad would smoke cigarettes. I thought that was so stupid. And with the pressure, the weight of the world felt on me, doing things I shouldn't have been doing, the lies, my morals were gone. I was not raised that way. Someone said do a line, I did it, and that line took me 10 years to get off of. So I went to 7 treatment centers, got arrested 7 times. I mean, I'll answer any questions you have, but a lot of people understand the addiction of just separation from family, feeling alone, being around people I shouldn't have been, getting jumped, you know, just being not a productive member of society to any way. But a big part of my story is I did get sober at my last rehab in 2018 off everything. I got introduced to the 12 steps and 12-step program. My life got completely better in 7 months, and I thought I was cured and didn't want to do step 12, which is to help other people. So I got introduced to, I basically told myself I'm not an alcoholic. I was only an addict. So I decided to try drinking and stop doing my program and helping people. And took my dad's car, thought it was mine, crashed in the garage, drove over the front yard. I was embarrassed, and I went to Yonkers, New York, and drank and did cocaine for a straight year until I found another pitfall. And looked back, said this is what worked. I just got to go do it again. And when it comes to step 12, my life is about helping people now. And been sober since March 3rd, 2019.
Wow. Thank you for all of that.
Uh-huh.
Definitely a couple of things that were poignant. Yeah, we all use for a reason, right? It's unfortunately the repercussions of our use. I mean, I have to take, an antidepressant, and do things just to help me modulate my life. And that's what we were doing before we recognized that there was probably a better way, right? And a lot of it is too is just it's facing that fear, right? It's facing that trauma, it's facing that injury. But those are all traumatic things that, yeah, I mean, I think to box and define trauma or PTSD into a very small types of events or whatever, I think it's a misnomer. I think people can get trauma in a lot of different ways, and unfortunately, it doesn't rear its ugly head right away, right? Or it doesn't manifest itself in something that's easy to diagnose, right? It shows up in the emotions, it shows up in the temperament. And so that's the same, I think, with obviously with alcoholism or any sort of addiction, right? You've got to deal with, there's a temperament change, and it's slow and it's conniving but you're right. You're spot on. And then that's the thing that happens to us, and why we relapse, right? Is that all we do is we remember the good times, right? We didn't wake up with a hangover. We had a good time. We got home safely, etc. Right? But we got here for a reason. Also,
Yeah.
we're not using anymore for a reason. The trauma occurs, and then faith lost is intriguing to me, because I do believe that trauma can make you question your faith for sure. I lost a daughter in 2012. I experienced 2 carjacks and 2 injuries to my lower extremities, all in the matter of 4 years. It was in leg injury, car accident, leg injury, car accident type situation. That was just kind of like, really? I mean, like, wasn't getting a break. Lost, other family members in the past that I know that I never resolved in my heart. My father dropped dead in 2016. So yeah, I get what you're saying, and I think if anything, sometimes I think faith makes us more raw to that pain. Right? It doesn't shield us from anything. It makes us suck it all up.
Yeah.
And that is frightening in and of itself, just the prospect of having to endure, loss like that, right? Or pain. And the only way through it is through it, right? That was one of the things for me when I went into treatment. So I got basically clean August 21st of 2023. And, 20 years of just battling alcohol and weed. And yeah, I mean, I wrote 2 goodbye letters to my dad and my daughter, and I bawled, and I had vivid dreams about them. And it was one of the most cleansing things I ever had to do, because it took me 6-7 years before I could even talk about my daughter without it ruining my day,
Yeah.
And that's where I think when it comes to educating those that don't understand addiction is so important. It was one of the things that drove me to start this, because if we approach this with a lot more empathy, we approach it with doing a lot of trying to put the shoe on the other foot, recognize those things, there would be a lot more advances in getting the help, and also removing some of the shame and guilt associated with the person suffering from it, because they're not in the rational mind, right? I mean, when you're being driven by so many different brain chemicals and they're all out of whack because of your use, and you're completely irrational, even when you seem like you're not. So it's been 5 years. What have been? Let's start with what have been the realizations that, now that you've been through all this period of time, what is it that you tell me why you're so thankful?
Really, it's a small things. I mean, I spoke at a rehab last night, and I was telling them how, all these like accolades and things I've accomplished in sobriety. And I told them, like, probably one of the there's always a few moments that come to mind, but there was one last year where 2 years ago, where I put up you know my first Christmas tree at my own place where I didn't live with my parents. And I remember being like just choked up and teary eyed. It's the small things that I never thought I would be here today. A lot of my friends aren't here today. Those are the tears of gratitude. And just like, wow, like I really didn't see this day coming. I didn't think I'd make it past like 24. And then there's things that are huge accolades. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but book signings, speaking to the youth, things that I never thought. People are trying to pull me out of the trenches. So it's really like the small moments in life. Even just having like the Yankee game on, the door open, breeze coming in, that moment of serenity. I'm not thinking about, oh, does anyone know what I did last night? How do I get $10 for this? Is this dude gonna try and chase me out for his money? Like, did I drink and drive and hit someone last night? There's just serenity, and it says in like one of the 12-step programs that we know peace. We don't always have it. There's gonna be struggles. I've had I'll talk about some when we get there, but like extreme highs, extreme lows in sobriety. But the main thing is it's still better than what it was, and it passes. I don't have to live in that resentment forever. And it's crazy just thinking about like alcohol in itself. You start to have these realizations. Like when I was like a little over a year or two sober, I'd go to a bar with friends. And I'd be like, life's kind of crazy, our society. Like all these people worked all week and they're here just beating up their organs with this poison. That was me. I mean, I can relate. I'm not better, but I was never sober, so I never really realized it. And I was like, this is kind of like a Rick and Morty scene. Like everyone's in here just drinking themselves retarded and spending all the money they worked on, and they're all gonna feel like crap tomorrow. And in a day and a half, they gotta go back to work. And that was me for 10 years. So things like that, moments where you start to see clearly in life.
Yeah, I hear you. I even during, maybe a not so volatile stage of my addiction, I had a winery. And I
Hmm.
remember that I even felt that my own moral conscience was kind of, I guess, kind of turned off with the fact that I recognized during like my tasting room hours that I was serving basically functioning alcoholics that were there every weekend.
Yeah.
And of course, I never would call myself one that at that time. But
No.
of course,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of ironic. It's interesting for me because I feel like after I've been through this whole year now, because I definitely associate the relationship that one has with their substance of choice, their drug of choice, right? Whatever it may be, right? When you stop doing it, it's a loss of a relationship, however weird and demented that is. And so this first year of doing things sober, right? It was almost like I was approaching milestones, but in the same type of weird way, it was almost like having experienced a death, and now I'm going through that year of firsts without that thing in my life, which it is. And
Yeah.
and so after passing the year, it was kind of weird because I felt again like another little like shift, kind of just like, yeah, I'm back living life again. It's not chasing, when I'm gonna, get my beverage or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
The extreme highs and lows. Did you experience a bad pink cloud? Did you have some really bad craving episodes? What happened?
Um. Well, it's a lot of like the good parts of my story came from bads. Um. So as you stated, like a lot of people know me as Recovery John online. That happened because I got sober in 2019 March. So 3 days after my year anniversary, COVID hit. So another time I kind of had to work against resenting God and life, and I was like, wait, I just messed around for 29 years. I got 1 year, I put it together, and no one's ever seen this before. That's been a lot, you know what I mean? And now I was killing it. I was just starting to help a lot of people. I was like, now I'm stuck in my house. Um, so in July, end of June, beginning of July of COVID of 2020, in 1 year, 1 week, my roommate from my last rehab overdosed. Kid I grew up with passed away. I believe it in sobriety or suicide. And then my all time, like one of my top three best friends, that was like a brother to me, in addiction, and even since we were kids playing baseball, took a Xanax and it was pressed fentanyl and died, and was found in his front yard. And I was just riddled with grief. I mean, the first year was a pink cloud, but I had a good team around me that kept me humble. But that kind of rocked me, and I didn't know what to do. So I prayed on it. My sponsor said, "Help people." You're in step 12. But I was stuck in my house, so like, who am I helping? Like, I can't go sponsor people. I can't speak at rehabs. Like, if I can go to a bar, casino. So I went and for a run. I like said a prayer to God, like, let me know how you want me to help people because I can't hold this grief. And cried. Went for a run, and it hit me. It was like I have social media that, at the time I probably had 300 followers on both, and it was all local people. So and everyone was dying. I mean, only the people I knew, so they're local that I knew of. So I was like, we have a problem here in this town in Connecticut. I'll start posting. So I literally took a picture of me like with no shirt on, flexing, and I wasn't even that strong at the time. Like, but you could tell I was fit and healthy on a bridge on a run, and I took a picture of me like crackhead, dopehead looking, and I put them by side, and I posted it on my Facebook and Instagram. I was like, I'm tired of posting RIPs. I'm an addict, alcoholic. You all know me. I'm John. I've been sober a year. There is a way to recover. There is hope. DM me anytime. And it started to like take off. Not so much in like followers. Like I had kids from high school hitting me up. Like I was getting all these people sober, and I was like, wow, there's more than AA or NA or whatever. You could help out in the public. Like so that started to take off. I started this like little clothing brand called Get Lifted, spiritually, mentally, physically. It sold out right away. I gave like part of the proceeds to someone in detox, that needed it. And then I went and just kept helping people. I'd post Monday motivations. So like then it was a big high again. I'm out here just feels like I'm helping, saving people. Like it's really God in them, but at least I'm connecting them with the help. And there's a purpose to my pain. And I just felt a lot of survivor's guilt. So that was a way to, not feel guilty for still being here, because a lot of my friends weren't. And, in the meantime, it kept happening. All these dudes I used to use with were just overdosing and dying one by one. And, my family was proud of me. My friends were proud of me. My brother was proud of me. And then, sadly, in 2021, my brother was struggling. And that's how I ended up writing the book. He ended up taking his own life one night, drunk, fighting with his girlfriend. And that was the lowest bottom I've ever hit, spiritually. I did not go back to a drink. My amends to him was that I'll stay sober and be the brother and son I'm supposed to be and person in society. And I got to be there for my parents, and there's a lot of blessings in that. I had 2 years of amends with him on my softball team, taking him to Yankee games. He was extremely proud of me. I have congratulation cards from him. But yeah, then I wrote Life on Life's Terms, published that, dedicated that to him, my friends I lost. And that's been amazing. That went #1 on Amazon new releases in all genres, December 2023. Um, and now it brings me to do things I never thought I would do. I mean, people paying for my book, asking for my autograph. I mean, those are firsts. It's just, you're like, what the heck? Like, I was asking like a dope dealer for an extra baggie, like 2,000 days ago, it's crazy to think about. So yeah, it's being able to like ride that wave, and there's going to be more shit. I mean, I've had a lot of, now I've dealt with like, I have all these business crazy opportunities. I'm trying to navigate that, and it's brought anxiety. So now I've been dealing with that, and now it's going up. So it's being able to ride that wave, but it comes and it goes.
Yeah, I guess good problems to have. Be careful what you wish for, right?
Yeah, yeah,
When
big
life's
time.
good, right? Wanted man. That's awesome. First of all, I guess condolences to the losses. I can't imagine. Um, and yeah, and grief. No matter how many times you experience it, everyone's unique, right? Every loss is a different experience. And yeah, I'll pray for you, brother.
Thank you.
The book. Tell me more about what the book is about.
So that's what that it started with, kind of. Well, I had to do the title was great. Life on Life's Terms, because that's kind of what my story goes on. I've had a lot of crazy, like we're talking about, yeah, crazy highs, crazy lows in sobriety. But that's life. I think as addicts, we just want to feel numb. So basically, that's how I came up with the whole Get Lifted. My LLC is Get Lifted John, and my username for social media used to be Get Lifted. And it's really everything I learned in self-help books and the 12 steps. That my drinking has nothing to do with my drinking, or my drug addiction has nothing to do with that. It has to do with how I get lifted spiritually, mentally, physically every day. And uh, when I started doing the social media stuff, I started helping people with depression. I started to help people that were just, I don't know, like not confident. Like people were just reaching out for help. They're like, you figure something out. Like, so I started to use a mix of like the 12 steps, self-help book stuff, things I made up on my own. And it became a program, how I stay sober today, and how I help people when they ask for help of that. My sponsor called it a spiritual bank account. So it's like one of the biggest things in there. The book itself goes from childhood to today. Well, last year, and each chapter doesn't talk about it, but it's my story. But it reveals parts of my story that have to do with the 12 steps. So finding a higher power, it'll talk about whatever part of my story, so on and so forth. And most importantly, it's aimed to help anyone. Obviously, I wrote it to help people on addiction and alcoholism, but I've probably had more people in normal life, normal people reach out and be like, "That book changed my life," and I hoped for that, but didn't know if it would actually happen. But it talks about like a spiritual bank account. Just I never understood why I was unhappy or why I was grabbing for negative things. Drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, whatever it may be. And my sponsor one time said, "What'd you do today?" And I was like, "Oh, I woke up." I was like 6 months sober, and I told him I was unhappy. And I was like, I woke up, ate a bowl of cereal, Snapchat a girl, played a little video games, and he just started laughing at me. I was like, "What do you think so funny?" And he's like, "You expect to be happy and have joy and peace? Like, what have you done to make yourself feel that?" And he's like, "You got to look at it as like you manage your money as a bank account. You know, you spend accordingly, and your bank account goes up and down." He's like, "You wake up, everyone's at zero." He's like, "You're 6 months sober. You just screwed people over for 10 years as a drug dealer, drug addict." So he's like, "You're at negative 100,000." He's like, "So when you wake up, if you pray on your knees, you get $10. You go to the gym, it's $20, so on and so forth. Do good things, meditate, guided meditation, go to an AA meeting, whatever it may be." He's like, "You choose how happy you're gonna feel, but by sitting around, you're not gonna be happy." So it talks about that, and it goes through making amends, but how anyone, addict or not, can live life on life's term and actually have joy, whether you're losing your brother, losing a job, whatever you may go into.
That's awesome. I do feel
Yeah,
that there are so many different ways to be successful in recovery that I encourage all people to keep, if you're having a hard time, you feel like you're stuck somewhere in it, go find something new, go
yeah,
get yourself to it. Even if, go to a different meeting, reach out to different types of organizations that are offering meetings of some sort that maybe just a different feel, different vibe for you. Stay connected. There's so many things online now that somebody can do.
yeah.
And if they stay connected with, with an IOP program or, even their detox, right? I think there's a lot of benefit there, but I find that you're, that, you know, our success is hinged upon our community. And this is one of the simplest ways to keep that alive and well is by staying actively involved in it, keeping it growing, helping others. 12-step stuff, right? Um, what do you think are the beliefs that are normalizing addiction right now? What do you think that? uh, I mean, because there's so many people in this world that drink, and some do it excessively without knowing. But what is it? Do you think that is something that is pushing people just to normalize addiction?
I think, I mean, other than like big business, like alcohol sales, I think, like the male stigma, I think that my brother struggled with that a lot. I mean, when he asked for help, he was kind of like, "I'm a man, I'm not supposed to be struggling." Thinking it's cool, just being out, being drunk, hooking up with random girls. Like, these are things like people idolize, like rappers. Everything's just become, I think, especially as a country, we've lost our morals, per se, and I'm far from perfect, but we idolize the wrong people. It used to be like, for instance, me idolizing as a kid, I idolized Derek Jeter, and it was more for his play. That was like how he held himself off the field. I got to meet him as a kid, and he was just the most respectful man. Like, he never got caught up with, well, towards the end of that one thing with girls, but he was always like clean cut. It wasn't, you didn't catch him at casinos or clubs often. Like, and now it's like our kids are idolizing like people like Travis Scott, or just like, people smoking weed, and they think that's cool. I mean, I deal with kids now, and they're also just the education. That's the next big thing I'm getting into, is educating schools. I have some ideas for some really big projects, because I work with the youth now here at substance abuse and personal development workshops, and I bring up fentanyl. They don't know what I'm talking about, and I'm like, that's crazy, because I mean, I know people smoke weed and died from fentanyl. Like, it is in everything. So we're not educating our youth, and then it becomes kind of also like an idolizing thing of like, you know, partying, smoking weed, stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely celebrations are the big one, right? And people have a hard time in sobriety, right? Dealing with going to weddings, they're big triggering events.
Yeah.
Um, Idolizing the wrong people, I agree with you 100%. Um, so do you think then that it is still, I mean, with all that being said, do you think it is a disease?
I look at it as an allergy, so it could be a disease too. I mean, in my research, or what I've read up, is that that's why they classify as disease, is that it creates a protein. I talked to a high doctor one time, and he explained to me, I'm not that intelligent when it comes to science, but that it like creates a protein in your stomach or in your brain. So like, my dad does not struggle, so he never understood like what's wrong with me and my brother. he has his 1.5 glass of whiskey, he's calm and he goes to bed. He's never drunk. You know what I mean? Um, he doesn't understand that, like, when I think of one, I instantly think of the ninth. I don't think of the first. Um, so they say that's why it's disease. Best way it was described to me was that it's like an allergy. Like, normal person can have one and chill. If I have one, I'm gonna do something bad and I'm gonna want a million. So it's like the allergy of more that's inside of me. Whether you put me at a roulette table with a line of cocaine, whatever it is, I'm gonna want more of it.
Yeah, one drink's never enough, and or one drink's too many, and a thousand's never enough, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I agree with you. Have you, from your mental health perspective, what has that been like for you? Did you have anything underlying that you needed to address, or was it just simply the use causing the problems? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, I think we're all a little fucked up, but especially me. But um, I mean, I knew I had the ADD or ADHD, whatever it is, as a kid. So I always had trouble focusing, high energy. So in that sense, like, especially like painkillers, they actually did calm me down. Like, most people fall asleep. I was very successful at that. Like, I ran a call center with 1,500 people on painkillers. Also ruined my life, but I think I was self-medicating for that. I've definitely had therapists say that I have a form of PTSD. I'm sure it hasn't gotten better from what I put it through in 10 years. But just recently, honestly, to be very open and honest, at 5.5 years sobriety, I have some massive life changes right now, so it kind of makes sense as well. But I had like my first couple panic attacks. I had like one or two, like my first 2 years, like one the first year, one the second year. And the therapist at the time said that they think my mind was not ready, used to things going right. Because basically in my entire adulthood, even halfway through puberty, I was already messing with my mind and just always chasing, like, going against trauma. But I had a couple weeks ago, and that was the first time that they considered like SSRIs or whatever they are, or some kind of antidepressant. Um, my therapist wants me to wait because I also haven't been to a lot of meetings. I haven't been to the gym. It was a bad storm of things I couldn't control. Business really busy, hurt my back, couldn't lift. Lifting is a huge thing in my just any kind of fitness. And then I have some massive changes right now, but yeah, we'll see about that. I definitely deal with ADHD and anxiety, but usually when my plan is right, I always don't focus great, but I can be peaceful and calm 90% of the time. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, and life is merciless in the sense that, as time moves on, right, you have more experiences, right? And some of them just aren't pleasant, right?
Yeah,
It's not, people don't always have blissful childhoods, just straight up facts, right?
yeah,
And some of those have the right choices, the right, the silver spoon, so to speak, for lack of a better term, but a lot of us don't. Um, and I think that they're the exception, not the norm, right? But when you also spend your life, if you're trying to compare yourself to other successes, then yeah, it's a life in vain for sure.
mm,
Um, and yeah, it's interesting because with me, with like marijuana, it's like I felt like I had always operated just normally as a manic type of person, a little bit fast thoughts, fast talking. And when I'd smoke, it would bring me down. And even the wife used to comment, it made you normal. Other people, they'd be on the couch sleeping, and for you, it'd be normal. And so,
yeah,
it was recognizing that, okay, well, I'm trying to now solve something with something else. And so I recognize that I should have, there's a lot of reasons why I should have addressed it earlier. I mean, again, hindsight's 2020, but it is what it
mm.
is. Um, if you had someone come up to you and say, "Hey, I need help. I don't know what to do." You have a 30-second elevator pitch. What are you saying to them?
If they're fully addicted, like in addiction, get to detox, get to rehab, get out, find the 12 step or whatever type of program or support or therapy works for you, and watch what you do all day is everything. Pray in the morning and to something that you believe in, and start filling your cup with positive things and not negative things.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
Well done. Well done. I don't think
Right.
I've ever gotten such a succinct response in that question when I've asked it in the past. Very well done.
Well, I have
Um,
about 1,000 people a month reach out for help, so it's gotten down to I should just make it a script at this point.
you have basically on a copy and a paste system now.
I should. I don't, but I try to keep it
Yeah.
personalized, but I might as well at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I always ask the questions and nobody ever poses it to me. But I agree with you. It's the logistics of how you're going to get better. I got to think that this is a common thread throughout addiction is that we're all highly emotional people to begin with.
Absolutely.
And so there's definitely a need to address that side of things, right? And a lot
Yeah.
of it is just simply empathy. When I went into detox day one, I mean, I was actually stone cold sober because
Mm.
3 or 4 days ago, before that, I was gone. I was gone. And I basically conceded, threw in the towel. And I'm like, I need help. I can't do this on my own. And, but going in and just talking to counselors and people, you're just like, oh my God, breath of fresh air. These people get me. These people understand, and
Yeah.
that, put some dignity back in it all, right? Because I think for the most part, we've celebrated, right, alcoholism in all of our commercials and everything, and then yet you show the degradation of society in people that are drug addicts going through rehab. It's like, well,
Yeah.
I can squash that right now because I've met a tremendous amount of intelligent people, smart, hardworking, in this whole sobriety problem, and probably the most real people I've ever met collectively. Just real, honest people that are just willing to bare their souls, be willing to admit their mistakes, be willing to work on reconciling their life, right, and getting on with it. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. We should always be striving to better ourselves, right? I think that that's something that's important, even in the best of times when we think we have it all figured out. That's when we have to be very careful, because then that's when we get cocky, we get arrogant, and then we go, it's thinking that we've cured alcoholism. We go have a drink and it's all over with again, right?
Yeah.
So you're no longer, obviously, you're not living life white knuckling it, doing other things basically just to pass the time because you're like scared to not be still. I mean, you're naturally already, you're high energy, high moving, high thinking, all these things, right? So your life works better at 75 miles an hour than it does at 35. Is that a good perception?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I wrote the book, my girlfriend came home and she's like, "You need help. Like, you need Adderall." Because I had like my laptop, I was playing video games, I had like a Yankee game going, music. So like, the meditation helps all that, but if I can, when I get in a groove, I can highly function at doing multiple things.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I have a buddy of mine who I'm trying to get on, who's basically been in like over 1,000 days recovery from Adderall addiction. So again, that's
Yeah.
the other thing. You got to be careful, right? I mean, it's and yet the guy operates $100 million business. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, um, okay. Um, can you get sober and recover without using the 12 steps? Do you think?
Absolutely. I can't sell that to anyone because not my experience. That's what will work for me. But I've heard people that stay sober at home, like just doing their own, like one day just snapped and they were done. Um, I have a friend, well, he actually did his 12 steps, but then he left the program and almost ultimately when people do that, they die of relapse from my experience. But he just goes to church on Sunday and he's a project manager in the city. He got his degree, sober still. So I think it's different for everyone, but I'm very careful to say that because, like I said, I deal with thousands, tens of thousands of addicts, and we're all looking for a way out. That's not the actual way. You know, we all. I'm unique. I don't need it. I did it for 3 years. But so I like to be honest. I don't push. Like it doesn't have to be the 12 steps, but that's the only thing I did that worked. I've tried everything else myself. Not everything, but like all different types of things myself. Even now, I have a therapist, but I can't really connect with her on that. She helps on my emotional side, my grief, other things. But when I'm like, oh man, just have a drink and crash a car and smoke some crack, like she like, doesn't really understand that. Whereas so there's different facets for different things, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's very interesting that a lot of people, there's some stigma against just doing the program or a program. Like, I don't care, celebrate or whatever works for you. Right away, everyone's like, "Oh, I don't think so." And in my experience, if they live, 99% of them come back around, ask for help again, and then they finally do it. So,
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that you have people looking at the 12 steps, right, solely as the process, right, and going, I don't want to do that, or I don't want to be confined to having to go to some sort of meeting, right, or I don't want to be associated still with that, right. I'm in sobriety, but I don't want to associate myself with that. But a lot of it is just the fact of getting to a meeting gets you in that community, regardless of
yeah,
what the 12 steps are, right.
yeah,
And and the unfortunate then drawback is that sometimes meetings don't jive for people. So they've got to find different times, they got to find different locations, find the one that makes sense for them, maybe even try different systems. The thing that was interesting for me was that I've have a relationship with God. I'm confirmed Catholic. And when I went through all this, because I've had a pretty wild relationship with him, needless to say. And when I went through this process, when I discovered AA, or obviously I knew of AA, but attending a meeting, looking at the 12 steps, when I was doing this all during detox, the thing that was interesting to me was that God spoke a lot to me in the 12 steps itself. And so I was like, I'm like, and so I've kind of leaned on that, and I've leaned on community. And I think that was one of the reasons too why I started this from like the 12 step, right, is basically, being of service to others, right?
yeah.
Um, and so yeah, so that was kind of my experience with it. And I've got because I've asked the question before, I get a lot of different responses, um, and so yeah, I mean, I think the beauty of it is that it's free, right? It's instant connectivity. It's something that you can do frequently to really help kill that time, especially on the front end with cravings. But I think that there also needs to be a growth period for that individual. And if they're basically white knuckling their existence, purely going to meetings to hang on for dear life, that's the only thing they've got binding them to anything, right? If they can't hold on to it, yeah, there's nothing left for them. And so I think that whole growth reality, and continuing to expand whatever spirituality you have is a positive thing, right? Um, Anything you wanted to touch on, Bud?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say that you just strike to me that I always like to say when it comes up to like AA or detox or God, um, it's been interesting with the social media because all before social media and having this platform, I only had my point of view or the hundreds of people in a couple of years I've seen come in and out of 12 steps, or that I've helped in the public. But now with social media, I have a couple of viral TikToks about one's about going to a meeting and looking through people's comments. It's amazing. Or now that I deal with getting people in the treatment, um, it shed a lot of light on me and addiction as a total, as a whole. I always tell people, check your motives. It's like you look at comments, always people like, God, no, AA is God, no, AA is there. And it's like, well, are you sober? No, I can't get sober. And it's like, well, if I could offer you something, if you could prove to me it doesn't work, I'm with you. But like, if you haven't tried it or you heard the word God, so you ran out, you're not afraid to be homeless drinking on the corner, but you're afraid to find God or have a little faith. So it's always amazing. And I get it because I was that at one point. But now I see hindsight 2020. I try to just shed a light for people that, give yourself a little more grace and a little more opportunity. I would try a line of whatever off whatever table, but you told me God, and I was like, that sounds like a bit much. So it's kind of like humbling yourself to be like, why don't I try some good things? Some meetings suck. I'll be honest. I'm big on some restaurants suck, but you find the restaurants that work for you. So I have my few meetings; they work for me. If I go another one, I try to deliver some good stuff. But um, it's ran by people, so it is hard. You're gonna have a sponsor you can find that has no idea what he's doing. Thankfully, I had some amazing people God put in front of me, and I got through the steps, which is the way it's intended to. And have since had no cravings to drink in 5 years. Granted, I'm a human. There'll be a thought of like, oh, I'm not married yet. Maybe on a beach at a wedding, but that's a fleeting thought. I don't sit and white knuckle anything. So I try to express that to people that there is hope and don't knock it till you try it, you know. But I think that's a big thing to be said.
Yeah, it's interesting. I bring up, you brought up trolls, and I like to make the comparison of trolls, especially when it comes to this topic, as someone, because I find that there are only a couple different types of people that ask you about why you stopped drinking when they find out you stopped drinking. And it's usually at some sort of a social event, right? And the opportunity presents itself right then and there, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have somebody that's going to ask you, oh, stop drinking, huh? And they're going to leave it at that. Or they're going to go, why?
Mm.
And they'll probably say something like, good for you. Or there'll be the other type of person that's going to be like, well, dude, you can't do this without me. I can't sit here and drink alone. Oh man, you weren't that bad. You could hang out with me and still do it, because I think those people are the ones that are struggling with themselves. They're struggling with addiction themselves. They're not at that full stage of contemplation, of change where they're ready to admit and go for it. But with you as an individual stopping what you're doing, recognizing you've gone too far, it causes that other person to question themselves real quick and go, am I drinking too much, right? And if they have a clear conscience, it'll be, oh, you stopped drinking, great for you, and they'll be done, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I get it, and that's why you focus on the ones that need help. You leave it at that. You're going to get that everywhere, right?
Yeah.
What do you think causes somebody to relapse?
Getting away from whatever works for them. I mean, complacency is a real answer. For me, even like I said, just that rough week I had. By the grace of God, I get help before I drink today. So it's a mix of not asking for help in time and complacency. But I spent I've been in the meetings for 10 years. It took me like 4 or 6 years to get sober, actually trying. And every single person that comes back from a relapse is, oh, stop going to meetings, stop calling my sponsor, stop doing the work, stop therapy, stop going to the gym. So it's a complacency, and then when things do get hard, you can come back for it. I'm so far from perfect. I mean, there's people that are like, oh, you just like must kill it in sobriety. I'm like, this guy got a book. I'm an addict. Like, I'll push it to the moment where I'm 2 weeks from a drink, and then I'll be like, all right, let's call my sponsor. And I think that's why I stayed sober, is I keep it in the day, and I found that kind of pendulum of when I know it's getting weird, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And it's like, I got to reach out for help and kind of realign things. And usually it's the basics. He'll say, when was the last time you prayed? When was the last time you went to a meeting? How often you go into meetings? And those are usually my three answers. I'm not going to enough meetings. I'm skipping prayer or praying in the car and sit on my knees or something. And, maybe I'm not in the gym as much or something. So it's usually the simple stuff. But when I used to relapse, I would feel it coming, but I didn't have that like self-awareness of the pendulum. And I would be like, whoa, why am I at a bar and I'm drunk? And now it's like, my brother died right away. I call. Even this week, I probably waited an extra 2 weeks. Business was getting stressful, all this different stuff. But I felt things were getting weird, and I called and got my ass to a meeting and talked to my sponsor a few times.
You brought up a good point, and it really comes down to truly loving ourselves again, being in tune with ourselves, recognizing when things are amiss, because I find that I have to do that now just from a mental health perspective, right? If I drop down for some reason, get into a little bit of a depressive state, seasons are changing, right? Maybe something
Yeah,
at work, maybe I'm not getting enough sleep, nutrition's off, whatever. I'm much more aware of it as far as going, this used to be, in a sense, a trigger that would cause me to go and try to feel better immediately. So you sit in it, right? Right. Embrace the suck, as military folk like to say.
yeah,
And yeah, and just increasing it in self-love. And I think, it's a twofold, right? It's the willingness to say no. It's the removal of the guilt and the shame, the hopefully some sort of an excitedness about the future that's coming, right?
Mhm.
Because now that this monkey's off your back, or at least it's now in a cage and it's tame, it's there's a lot to live for, right? And you're going to be present for all of it. And I think that's huge. That's the thing that people are forgetting. People don't realize. People that are afraid, go, what's my life going to look like without it, right? This is part of me. This almost basically defines me, and so people are scared to lose that sense of their identity, that safety blanket, that cozy thing that they could always rely on to do the job, right?
Yeah.
And get out and face fears, be able to sit there and go in conversation with friends that, yeah, I'm seeing a therapist, and be okay with it, not having shame associated with it. It's so huge, so huge. John, but this has been amazing. We've been almost at this for an hour. I want to have you on again soon. I'm going to come up with some juicy, pressing questions for you in the world of sobriety, if there are any that we haven't already started scratching the surface on. I appreciate your time, sir. You are at Recovery John on TikTok and Instagram. I'm going to be sending the word out as well. That's how we find you. Keep up the great work, sir. You're a blessing to the sobriety community. Amazing story. Glad you're doing well. And keep up the good work.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
You have a good night, sir.
Thank you too.